Welcome to this week's edition of Inter-University Debate, which is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. I'm your moderator. My name is Fancy Gender Lake. I'm an advocate and a tax consultant. On this week's edition, we are hosting students of Uganda Pentecostal University, all the way from Fort Portal. Uganda Pentecostal University students, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So this week we are discussing oil prospects. To what extent will the oil revenue resolve the socio-economic challenges in Uganda? Before we even go into how will the oil prospects and oil revenue resolve the socio-economic problems in Uganda, we look at since the search for oil in the 1920s to the commercial discovery in 2006 to the final investment decision signing in 2022, Uganda has grappled with several issues around the oil sector. We talk about environmental challenges, human rights issues that have come up, the EU decision to halt the operations of Total in Uganda. We look at issues of land compensation, corruption, where some of the citizens even think the oil is already being ferried, and several other issues in there that we are going to discuss today with students of UPU. So before we delve deep into that discussion, let me introduce the panelists for today. I'll start with the gentleman that is seated right next to me, and he's very, very familiar to the inter-university debate, and that is Mr. Baluku Sam. Sam is pursuing Bachelor of Laws from Uganda Pentecostal University, and he is the former guild speaker of the university, former GRC faculty of law of the university, and the former flag bearer of NUP for MP Kasese municipality. Sam, you're welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
Okay, our second panelist is the one seated right next to Sam, and that is Ms. Katushabe Naume. She is also pursuing Bachelor of Laws at Uganda Pentecostal University. Naume, you're welcome to the talk show.
Thank you.
Okay, our third panelist for today is Mr. Jude Tadius Kule. Kule is also pursuing Bachelor of Laws from Uganda Pentecostal University. He's the GRC faculty of law and guild aspirant for Guild President 2022 at Uganda Pentecostal University. Tadius, you're welcome to the talk show.
Thank you.
And we wish you all the best.
Welcome.
Okay. So our fourth panelist for today is Ms. Nuwahereza Joanita. She's also pursuing Bachelor of Laws at Uganda Pentecostal University. Joanita, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So we have a panel of lawyers discussing the oil prospects.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I introduced on the show, we are talking about the oil prospects and how the oil revenue will resolve socio-economic challenges in Uganda. So before we delve deep into that part of the discussion, let's look at the overview. And I'll start with you, Sam. We know that oil discovery has been way back in history. Please take us through the historical background of the oil sector in Uganda.
Thank you so much, Madam Gender. When we look at the background, the historical background of the oil sector in Uganda, it starts way back in the 1920s by one of the geologists called E.J. Waylands, who discovered the first deposits in the Albertine region and a few parts of the DRC. And of course, it was not so serious by then because we were under the colonial kind of government. And by then we also see that the discovery is being interrupted by the World War that came in. We also look at now the post-independence interferences, the 1980 wars and what, when NRA went to the bush, of course there were interruptions in the discoveries. And then also look at the 1990 when Uganda now interests itself in the exploration of minerals. We see companies coming up, licensing some of these companies. And then the most recent being the first oil, now the commercial discoveries of oil and gas in Uganda being in 2006, when oil was discovered in the Albertine region of Hoima. And of course, when it pushes now us to 2022, these are 15 years down the road. Yes, the discoveries were made, but of course, Uganda is undergoing a process. We see the exploration process, it is done. We are now undergoing the development process, and we are now heading towards the production process. So basically, as the process goes by, when you look at the history, of course, there are laws that have been brought in place. We look at the Environmental Act. We look at the various agreements that are being signed. There are a lot of summits that have been going on. And of course, we also address our minds to the UN General Assembly of 1962, the 1803 UN General Assembly that also gave the countries sovereignty to handle their natural resources. And it's upon that background that now Uganda has now the locus standi to manage their resources, to manage the discoveries, and then also look at the East Africa integration coming in, where Uganda, being a landlocked country, liaises now with Tanzania. Of course, previously they had wanted to liaise with Kenya. I don't know how Kenya was scrapped off, but then we see Tanzania coming in and signing these agreements. And of course, being I'm sorry to say, it is almost a third-class country. We may not have companies that can do this work. Now we see Total Energies coming in as a contractor, and of course, we all know that given the background of Uganda, our economy is still lagging behind, and we so believe that in the near future, the oil and gas sector is going to improve the Uganda's economy and also strengthen the East African integration, as we see the agreement between Uganda and Tanzania, as we also look into other subsequent developments. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Sam, for taking us through that historical background. Let me move to Naume. So, Naume, coming back from history to now 2022, we are here. What is the general overview of the oil sector right now? What is happening? What is the current status quo?
Thank you very much, moderator. And talking about the status quo of oil project in Uganda right now, I would like to inform those who are not yet informed that oil was discovered in the Albertine region, and Uganda is hopefully yet to start exploring oil from that very region. So the Uganda has moved a step in the production of oil, has moved a step and put in place some facilities or some things that may be needed in exploring oil. That is the refinery that is being reconstructed, then the airstrip that is also being constructed in Hoima, then agreements have also been signed with Uganda and other countries or companies. Take an instance of the Total Energies. It has roughly 60% of the shareholding Then there is this one for CNOOC for China. We are also hoping to cooperate with them in oil production. Then Uganda as a country has also another authority that would take part or will have a share in oil producing. Then the most recent agreement that was between Uganda and Tanzania, meaning with those agreements and authorities, Uganda is very ready to cooperate with other countries or companies in oil production that will help us to get an international market for our products. Yeah. Then I think that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Naume. Let me bring Tadius into the discussion. So, Tadius, I understand the entire panel is studying law, and you're going to carry the legal burden today. So, how ready is Uganda legally? Because I know oil is a capital-intensive sector, so there is need for a strong legal backing. So how prepared legally in terms of the legal framework, institutional framework?
Yeah, thank you, the moderator. Of course, from the inception of oil and gas industry in Uganda, that was the commercialization of it in 2006. Uganda has come up with different regulations, different provisions, legislations about this oil project. Of course, as we see it as a mega project, which would lead to a good impact based on the socio-economic status of Uganda. So as a country, we look at the laws in general, like the Constitution provides for the laws governing all resources, and of which oil and gas has to be part. So here, in 2008, the Commission of Inquiry was laid by His Excellency by providing the inspection of oil, the reserves, that is Hoima, that is under the Albertan region, that is the Marshall Falls. So by this concept, they brought up a lot of discussions that came into acts, like maybe under parliament institutions. Now, this came at a point in 2008 when the Commission of Inquiry was put in place, and this brought up a legal framework that now this oil and gas is working over, that must be put under consideration. Here, we are looking at the Petroleum Act that was put in place to regulate all activities, regulate the principles, regulate the commissions, to regulate the companies that were brought to board, that is Total Energies and the offshore company from China that has come during the memorandum of understanding at which these companies agreed to exploit, to express themselves in this oil project. Here, we are looking at the different laws, like maybe I can take an instance of law governing the people and the project and the government. So these are three entities, like the East African Crude Pipeline Project Act. It is an act where it is presenting the ideas of the government in concern with the oil sector, bringing out the people under the compensation session, maybe which has been brought out as the Compensation Act. Now this act, it's where the people are coming in, looking at their grounds at which maybe they may benefit from this project, in which kind this is a mega project, but also the people must be compensated in their own way. Now here, I look at it in a way that it coming as a project, let it not interfere with the human rights of the people. Like maybe I may look at it in the perception of which, like the East African Crude Pipeline Project, it has come running from Hoima to Chotera. This project has passed a lot of farms, a lot of places, a lot of people's residences and whatever, in which way that these people need to be compensated. So that's why the government has come all along with the Compensation Act. I also call to the effect that the government has put in regulations, maybe look at it being vested the powers in the Land Act by taking an instance where they are vested powers to control all the natural resources. Here, the people have been set off from their lands, from their property, basing on the concept that the government has to reserve all resources, maybe like petroleum, any other resources. But here, the people must be put to board in their kind, and this is what we look at as the legal framework. Still, I also argue on a way that we also have the Environmental Act, where this oil project is all versed with environment. We look at the environment with people, the environment with resources. Now, how are they going to concur in part that every party in this environment is catered for? Here, it has come up with the Environmental Act that is best to control all factors, all consequences that may come up from this oil project. Like regulations of natural resources, maybe abuse of water bodies, abuse of land, abuse of nature maybe, because we see this oil project is incurring along with so many consequences in like maybe the pollution, water pollution, the global warming stuff, the incurrent zone. So all these things must be put to board in such as a legal framework. So when I speak about the legal framework, I'm connecting the project and how it should be implemented in the people, because we know that anything to happen, it must be governed, it must be principled and given provision at which both parties will have to take their concern. Still looking at the legal project, we've looked at the way, the mode of exploration, the mode of development and production. So here, the exploration was done, as my earlier comrades from Uganda Pentecostal University have earlier discussed it, as in a way of exploration, now development, now production. So the production incurs a lot of struggles with the people, in which the mindset of the people must be regulated through law. It is not the fact that we are going to benefit from the oil project. Maybe it's going to add on our socio-economic status, but how are we as local persons understanding it, or how are we benefiting from it? It's not that way much. Now, let us take our lines proper in a way that we admit the concept of the project, but let the government itself, as it has come up with these laws to regulate its concerns and the people's concerns, so that the project can look mega and preferable to each one to invest in, and each one to be profitable too. And we see how maybe it can help us. Thank you, the moderator.
Thank you so much, Tadius, for that deep insight into the legal framework and institutional framework of the oil prospects in Uganda. Let me move to Joanita. So, Joanita, I know the issue of oil has been received with different reactions. Now, my question to you is, what are the expectations of Ugandans and the government, the Ugandans at the grassroots level? What are they expecting from the oil?
Thank you, the moderator. I think the Ugandans, some of the Ugandans expect, when the oil process goes on, the country debts might be reduced. We're all aware our country has a lot of debts that we're not expecting to pay off within these other activities.
Yeah, it's now over 73 trillion.
So we expect, if the oil process goes on, we might reduce the higher debts. And then Ugandans expect local content. Here I mean, our Ugandans are going to learn more skills from the foreigners. These skills can be used within our country for development. And then when the oil process goes on, Ugandans expect jobs. And it is out of these jobs that the social and economic life of Ugandans is going to be promoted. And then the other thing, Ugandans expect development of infrastructures. Here I mean, when this process of oil is going on, so many things are going to be set up. Schools for the people working within the mining grounds, their children to attain education, hospitals. These places are not usually good for human health. So good hospitals could be constructed to improve human life in the sector of health. And then putting that aside, roads could be improved. Fine, there are roads, but the status is not yet to the standard. So I expect as a Ugandan, if this process goes on, roads could be improved for the easy transportation. of the oil. And then domestic revenue. Here I mean, take an example in the Albertine region, there are people surrounding. So I think when the oil process goes on, these local people will at least be uplifted. Here I mean, they will have some friendly activities, domestic activities to keep them busy. When these people are working in the mines, these people will be providing some services to the people working to the mines, be to the foreigners, be to our fellow Ugandans. The people within the areas of oil will have to provide services to these other people working. And when these people are providing services to these people working in the mines, that is money. You see, these people are indirectly employed. So I think Ugandans, cutting the story short, Ugandans are really expecting much from the exploitation of oil.
Okay, thank you so much, Joanita, for that. Let me bring Sam back into the discussion. So, Sam, we have a fully packed expectation. We expect a lot from this oil, and like we heard from Joanita, from local content to reduction in debt, because according to the budget that was read in June this year, our debt stands at over 73 trillion. It was actually more than the budget we are running for this year. So my question to you is, how is the government managing these expectations?
Thank you so much. Of course, the expectations are too high. People want to get jobs. People with companies want to get contracts. The expectations are really, really, really high. But then when we look at the status quo, the agreements being signed, the community is not sensitized in any way whatsoever about the content or the conditions, the terms and conditions in these agreements. For example, we have the Uganda Petroleum Institute at Kigumba that is training welders and people to work within the petroleum sector, but we don't know the criteria of how one is supposed to access this institution, for example. We've had scholarships ongoing, but what is the criteria? I saw some list somewhere back, but it has names from one region. As in, people have high expectations. Yes, we know that science education is a bit expensive, but our students have not been exposed to these opportunities. So I believe that government now is supposed to come in and be transparent enough, give the young people or students the opportunities, for example, to study, to access these scholarships, go to the Petroleum Institute in Kigumba, for example, and see how best they can have an empowered generation, an empowered citizenry. We also look at the companies that are supposed to also participate in the exploration of oil. Most of these companies, we don't know their establishment, how the database. Do you have a database, for example? There are people who do not know what it takes, most especially the suppliers, those who would supply some of these things. What is the criteria? How does one either register with the authorities to have his or her company participate in this? Of course, how about the registration? Are these companies registered? Are these companies established? And of course, the pipeline also needs a lot of manpower. We have our guys in Kule who do a lot of welding and what. But are these people empowered? Are these people trained? How best do we have? Are we going to have Ugandans participate in the production of oil? Also look at then also the ongoing a violation of the human rights. Yes, we are looking at how best we can improve our economy, how best we can sustain our economy, and how best Ugandans can be self-reliant and economically independent. But how about their rights. There are violations going on. We have abductions ongoing. We have people being, we're having people the delayed justice, for example. And yet we are looking at how best we can attract potential investors. Now, abductions are ongoing, unlawful arrests are ongoing. So it also scares away our potential investors. So government should also look at how best they are going to handle their the human rights issue in context, because we saw even the European Union coming up. They should see how best they can address the human rights issues, so that even it is going to be much more easier to attract potential investors, so that they can live in a habitable kind of environment. Of course, government should also look at also the delay. There's a lot of delay, sincerely. You look at the oil deposits being discovered in 2006, but then these are now 15 years down the road. We have the Uganda Petroleum Authority, we have the UNOC in place. These people are getting salary, they're getting allowances, but we should also expedite the process. So basically, that's what government can ideally do to have the oil production, the oil and gas sector flourish in these coming days.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Let me move to Tadius. I see he has something to say.
Yeah, I can add some spice on my comrade's point about the expectations, the local market, the local beneficiaries. You know, when these projects come based on the oil and gas, we look at how we, the local citizens, how we Ugandans, we can be best to attach ourselves to it. Look at the memorandum of understanding that was signed between the government and these companies, that is Total and the China offshore company, in 2008. This was best to control their contracts with the government in concern with the oil project. But here, the small sectors, the small entities, like the hotels, like the services, these things have been given to the people around, to the companies around. Not certain, but however, we have got some provision in the Petroleum Act that shows that the Total and the China company should,
CNOOC.
yes, the CNOOC should not come out in a way that it should take over the whole section of administration. Maybe look at all entities, all the business concerned with the oil. But around Hoima, as Council Naume brought it out, it was like the airport. So within the airport or around it, there are hotels established by we Ugandans. I don't think the Chinese or a French person in those companies can still come with an intention maybe of constructing maybe a hotel, maybe a school for their children. So these things are going to be back to us in some way. But however, let us look at the perception where we shall benefit, not maybe looking at the prospects in a way that these people are coming to explore oil, exploit it, and we find ourselves not benefiting. The government is clear. However, it being clear, let it provide, let it execute its programs by committing itself to the fundamental human rights, not violating any, because the government is the people. So if it takes its advantage over the people, then it is losing the whole process.
Okay, let me just probe something more from Tadius. Now, when we, some time back, I think a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3, government, specifically Petroleum Authority Uganda, provided a platform where companies, suppliers are able to register, and you know, those who feel that they can offer services, including individuals,
Yes,
are able to register on the platforms. Don't you think those are some of the steps that government has put in place to ensure that some of these expectations are met?
well, of course, it is a good step it has made. The issue here holding is how is it executing the oil project? I may be maybe a well-off a businessman. I have business to do with the oil project. But who is the local person there? The government should not at all look at the wealthy, the middle class, only to participate in the oil project, but it should base itself from the ground. The people there, like in Hoima, when actually the oil project, this East African Crude Pipeline project, it runs from Hoima to Chotera. There are 10 districts it passes through. So all these people have been displaced. So let it look at the local person, not the middle class to benefit, but who should benefit. Let each party have its consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me move to Naume. So Naume, like it has been brought out by the other panelists, we have a fully packed group of expectations from the government. Now my question to you is, how best can the government manage all these expectations?
Thank you very much. But in my opinion, yeah, Uganda ranks among the most corrupt countries. Yes. So how would we expect to implement and fulfill people's expectations? Yeah, we have to consider that, because if we've seen government officials or the funds for health funds being swindled, then how about petrol or oil prospects? Yeah, putting that one aside, laws have been put in place. Yeah, laws have been put in place, but if the constitution, the supreme law of the land, is being violated, or it's what it says or what it provides for, we are not following it. So how would we expect the oil acts or whatnots to be put in place? So yes, the government has tried. So we are on a probability that the oil prospects and people's expectations may be fulfilled, or we may be disappointed, because this is not the first project in Uganda of such a kind. And putting that aside, the agreements that are being signed, there are no local people. There are no local people that are participating there. We don't know what is on the ground, or we don't know the deals that are being planned on our oil. Let's
Okay, let me move to Juanita. So let's talk about the issue of transparency. You know, it has been brought out by the other panelists, and now Naume has nailed us there. Let's talk about transparency. So I know that there has been a lot of transparency questions in this country. Issues of corruption, issues of transparency, even around the oil. One time I was on a border, and the border guy was telling me, you know, the government is already ferrying our oil when we are sleeping in the night, you know. They have vehicles, they are carrying our oil. Then I was like, okay, I was told the oil is as heavy as shoe polish. How is it being carried in vehicles? But let's talk about these transparency issues. What are some of the concerns of Ugandans in terms of transparency in this issue of oil?
Thank you, the moderator. To me, fine, as she said, corruption, it is true. It is in Uganda, and they're trying to fight it. But when we are to talk about oil, the East African crude oil pipeline project, I think it is not a project that was brought up by Ugandans. I don't think it was brought up by Ugandans. So to me, I think that project was brought up to secure our oil. Them having that idea of corruption in the country, I think it was brought up to save our oil and maybe try by all means to fight people ready to take away our oil minus our notice.
Okay.
And putting down our expectations.
Okay, so Juanita is agreeing with my border guy, sort of. Let me move to Tadius. I see he has something to say.
I think with the issue of transparency in Uganda, it has been a problem, and it will still become a problem. because we see these big fish around the big man are too much egocentric. They don't look at the needs of the population, but their own families to have their dishes shine, not all having concern for other people. Now, I take this in two perceptions. The oil and gas project, as it has come, it is a good mega intention and mega project that every Ugandan would wish to hear in his or her lifetime. But look at it in a way that we may mislead the project, we as Ugandans, and not the local person, but the officials under it and in the government. So, in which way? Corruption in Uganda, but corruption presupposes that there should be an element of theft. Sorry, an element of intelligence in theft. But here in Uganda, it's just bundelism. They're just taking things on large scale. So, we may expect much, as per the question, but the expectations may be misled by our very own. So how should we match this? It is by looking at the transparency, by giving activists, the NGOs, platform to access the people, to make assessment, to bring out arguments, the dialogue like this. They take questions to the government. So these people should not make it to their offices that they must administer this oil. Let them come back to the people, so that our expectations as the country, not as an official, not as the president, not as me as Jude, but as a country, since our motto says, for God and my country, mean that we're one person. So let us prospect in a way that we merge the whole point, the whole project, in good hearts, not in individual benefits. So the oil project takes instance in two accounts. Let us look at Libya. Libya had oil. You can see how our prominent African leader, Muammar Gaddafi, was taken. It was oil. So Uganda may think much of expectation in this oil, but it may mislead the whole country as Uganda. We may come to end as Libya, simply because these Europeans are coming, the French company, we never know their hidden intentions. So let us look at ourselves and regulate ourselves with the government. Let the transparency in these provisions, the act, the agreement, understand the MOUs being done by the government bodies with the Total Energies and the China companies. So let us have transparency. Let the people be informed of all what is taking place, not leading as Libya. Thank you.
Okay, let me bring some into that discussion. So there are issues of transparency and accountability, even before we see the first drop of oil in Uganda. How is the government handling this issue of transparency and corruption?
Of course, thank you so much. I don't speak for government, and I may not be so sure on how really they are going to handle this, given the status quo. Uganda being a corrupt country, a lot is going on. Right away, even from the compensation. We have the compensation issue, the relocation issue, and the settlement issue. Valuing of people's land, the ones being evicted from where the oil deposits are. There's no streamlined kind of compensation, whereas the other one has gotten this much, the other one is getting this much, There's no clear justification of how the citizens or the residents of these areas are going to benefit. And number two, there's no transparency whatsoever in these agreements that are being signed. We don't know. The Ugandans who we should say the landlords of this place, they don't know how about what is our remuneration as Uganda. What percentage are we taking as Uganda? What percentage is Tanzania taking? And what are the benefits? How is it going to add up on the economic value of this nation? Yes, we all know that once the pipeline project is done, it's going to contribute at least something like 40% to the country's GDP. It is because it is going to add something, put up something on the economic value of Uganda as a nation. But then the way how the streamline, there's the way how it is not streamlined enough. Right away from the scholarships, like I told you, we are going to have people coming in, but how about our own people? How are our own people empowered? The scholarships are going on, training is going on at the Chigumba Petroleum Institute, but who accesses it? How about these? How about these scholarships? How about the small-scale industries? How about this person, this local person, this mother who sells matoke in Hoima? How about this welder in Hoima? How are they going to benefit? So we should also look at how best government puts strict regulations, and also look at now inclusiveness of different stakeholders into the system. Of course, we have realities. We expect realities. For example, I come from Kasese, where wildlife contributes something small, I think, annually to the communities. How are the kingdoms, for example, Bunyoro Kingdom, going to benefit? How about the local governments in the Bunyoro sub-region going to benefit from their oil sector? How best has government convinced these people that this oil is our oil and it's for our own benefit and we are going to benefit from it? The realities that are going to come in, how are they going to be handled? So it is a very, very big perspective that we have to address as a country, that we have to address as a nation, because it may come up with a lot of eventualities. We should also look at also the security as well. Like I said, we also need, the government should also strengthen its security, because oil is an expensive resource. And of course, we should also have a country that is habitable for investors. Let's work on the human rights issue, see how best Ugandans can fully enjoy their human rights, so that even the investors who are coming in, the companies that are coming in, are well covered, are will have the assurance that they're not going to have any interruptions whatsoever. Because when you see the EU Parliament coming in place to restrict Uganda, to restrict the ECOP project, sincerely, it is a shame. A country that is trying to grow, but then you're restricted here and there, much as we are a sovereign state. But it really shows that we have a lot going on and we have a lot to work on. We should not ideally preach water, and yet we are drinking wine. So if we are working on the economic kind of integration, if you're working on how best we can improve our economic value, let's see how best we can also work on our human rights, so that if you're improving the economy, then the people also should be empowered. People should not live under threats. People should not live under intimidation, and yet they are in their own country. It should work vis-a-vis the economic empowerment and also the enjoyment of the rights that are naturally given to us.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Let me give Naume the chance to conclude on the corruption issue, then we move forward. So how best should the government handle this issue? Because we have seen that there is the Anti-Corruption Act that is in place. We have the Penal Code Act. We have the Anti-Corruption Code. We have the IGG. But we still have these issues prevailing. And people still have questions of accountability and transparency in place. So how best should the government handle this issue?
Thank you very much once again. How best the government can improve that is only and only implementing the laws that have been put in place. Yeah, if themselves, the government officials or those very people in power, try to implement and direct other people on what they're supposed to do, because some people do it out of ignorance. They don't know, maybe some people are not even informed of the corruption vices that are taking place in the country. So when people are informed, they're sensitized about such viruses, I may call them, I think it will be easy for the law implementers, for people to follow the law. Like, let's say the Public Finance Management management has been put in place, but really, are we really practicing what is supposed to be done? So I would think or propose that if we really implement, we and the government, we implement the laws, it will somehow curb that corruption vice.
Okay. Thank you so much. At that point, we are going to take a short break, and we'll still come back with students of Uganda Pentecostal University discussing the oil prospects in Uganda and how the oil revenue will solve socio-economic challenges in Uganda. Thank you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive socio-economic and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break. We are still with students of Uganda Pentecostal University. We are discussing the oil prospects and how the oil revenue will resolve socio-economic challenges in Uganda. So let me start right with Joanita again. So let's delve into the discussion on human rights. We have seen on Twitter and all over social media, we have seen hashtags of Stop EACOP. We have also seen and watched the EU decision where EU was like, you know what, Total, you need to halt your operations in Uganda due to human rights and environmental issues. So my question to you is, what are these issues? What are some of the human rights issues that have come up from the oil prospects?
Thank you, the moderator. True, human rights issues have come up. For example, we have seen people being displaced from their own land. And it is, the Constitution states it, a human being has a right to own, to have their own land. Only you can go away with your land only if you've been compensated. But we have seen people displaced from their land, and these people have not been compensated. We have seen these very people coming up on streets to strike because of that. So that clearly shows you this oil process has brought up human rights issues. And then we still again see human rights issues. Some people have not been consulted. And it is a right of Ugandans to know things happening in their country. But we see some Ugandans have not been consulted. Their things have just been taken and destroyed. Still, these people come up to riot. That's also a human rights issue. And then when we are to talk about compensation, we see some people have been compensated huge amounts, and some people have totally not shared on the cake. Still, we see these people rioting. I think this could be the reason as to why the EU intervened for these issues to be solved first. But then we see these issues are still going on. People out there suffering. People who owned their property are now on the streets suffering. We don't see them owning anything, and we don't see them benefiting from that. I think land and compensation, when you're talking about the issue of oil, could be the major human rights issues that have come up. That's all I can say about the human rights issues when you're talking about oil, majorly in this discussion.
Okay, so thank you. Let me move to Sam. So Sam, questions of human rights that have come up, how are these issues being handled? Are they being even handled
Uh, it's quite ironical that the government of Uganda handles their things in different ways. We saw students demonstrating over the EU resolution, and these students were being protected by security. They marched all the way from Kololo in the guise of, they had told their teachers that these students were coming for a meeting, for a user meeting. Then they are carrying placards, they're carrying manillas, but they're being protected by the police because they are protesting against the EU resolution that Uganda should not proceed with the UOP before these human rights violation issues are concerned. It is a bit disheartening that even parents were not aware. Most of these students were even minors per se. Most of these are students of senior 3, senior 2, and senior 1, coming to the streets to demonstrate, and they are protected by the security. And then you also see the NUP activists coming in to protest against the violations, in support of the EU resolution, and these people are dispersed. So I would urge government sincerely that as far as handling the human rights issues are concerned, they should, and vis-a-vis the oil and gas sector prospects, they should try to balance the boat. We should not disguise as if we are a corrupt free generation, as if there is nothing going on, and also involve minors, involve students in some of these things. So government should come on board and see how best they handle these human rights violations first, so that we can now pave way for the economic transformation. Of course, there are high levels of unemployment. When you see these protests coming up, when you see this high crime rate, it's because our people are unemployed. You go to Kampala, there are a lot of youth on the street. These people need to be empowered. Now this would be an opportunity now of engaging our youth in training, in vocational skills, as in preparation ahead of now the production of our oil. We all know that, of course, when we talk about rights, we also have to also talk about the climate justice. We've seen civil societies coming out condemning the oil project, and of course government it's now, I saw Total coming up recently and saying no, we've benchmarked, we've made enough research to ensure that the oil production does not affect the climate issues. So we also have to interest ourselves also in these emerging technologies vis-a-vis now the issue of climate justice, so that the oil production does not affect now our environment as Ugandans. So it is totally a wide kind of topic that needs to be addressed, and also Ugandans need to be in the know, the far we've come, the status quo, and the future of the oil production. And more so, Uganda having the youngest population of youth who are below 40 years, that is about 80%, they should directly be involved. We should not look at today, but we should also be in position to foresee the future that is coming ahead of us. And also have a very calm and working environment for every Ugandan. Extrajudicial killings, unlawful arrests, and what should first be worked on, so that we can be in position to attract potential investors, so that people can also be in the know that whilst we are going to work on the oil production on sector, we are also protected. How about the remunerations, the advantages that come up with the oil production? People should be well versed with some of these issues. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Sam. Let me move to Naume. So Naume, aside from the human rights issues, the EU also cited environmental issues. And I know Sam hinted on some, as well as the rest of the panelists. So what are some of those environmental issues that have come up?
Of course, we expect when oil exploration starts, our environment or climate will be at a risk of air pollution, I may say, and water pollution. So Uganda as a country gets its other revenue from the wildlife. So how would you expect those wildlife species that stay in water, how will they survive? Yeah, that is one of them. Then forests, of course, around the area, the Albertine region, which has, the Albertine Graben, which has forests and the whatnots. There are also wildlife. That would be my main concern. How will they also survive? So the EU's intervention here, I see it as, should I call it like disturbing our oil exploration? Because if they intervene in a way that oil exploration will cause climate risks, I would imagine in Uganda the highest percent, they use charcoal and firewood. So where do we normally get the charcoal and firewood? That is, we cut trees. Yes, it is also an environmental risk. So I think if they allow in oil exploration and they improve on our technology, like people get used to like using gas, liquidated gas, and other means minus cutting down trees, it can also work.
Okay. Thank you, Naume. Let me bring Tadius into that discussion. So, Tadius, how best should the human rights and environmental issues be addressed? Because we have, on one hand, the people saying, you know, there are these issues that are coming up. On the other hand, we also have the oil sector that the government has invested a lot of time, money, and resources into. So how do we strike a balance?
Yeah, thank you, moderator. The aspect of human rights, it is fundamental in this world. I'll first give a background of human rights. We look at, in 1948, we had the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and which is enshrined under Chapter 4 of our Constitution, 1995. So looking at that background, I see that there's no way the government can mislead its concept, its very constitution that it enacted. So the people must be catered for. When I take instance of the submission given in by the EU recently about the oil project, how the human rights have been violated. Yes, it is, they have. Because we can see the evictions on people's land. We can see the abductions. We can see the judicial harassment, lack of independence of the judicial system in a way that we are implementing the laws, lack of the government itself in implementing the acts, the provision that is put in place. So all these are violating the human rights. So how can we curb this? How can we go of this? It is by the government itself implementing the very provisions, the very acts, the very laws they put in place. Because these laws are best to cater for the people and the government. So if they cannot implement the law that they have created, so we may not see any validity of this eco project, of this oil and gas project. You know, for something to happen in certainty, both people, the government and its people, must benefit in a rightful way. So looking at the human rights, I'll best recently in Bulisa, there is a guy who worked with an NGO who was just abducted about same issues. Some names of Maxwell, if I can remember too. Yeah, that you can see such. Instead of looking at the ways in how the concerns of the people must be put to board, but they are still abducting them, meaning that they want to eliminate the activists who can speak out, the outspoken ones, and they tend now to conflict the whole idea, and the people are not informed. All these are traversing the people, the questions, the errors around are just because people will lack information about the project. Because if you are informed, like in the understanding between the governments, the government and the managing companies, because we are suspecting something from them, we are suspecting a lot of corruption. That's why we are under question to them. But if these things were done under transparency, nothing would happen. We will be calm, and everyone will be taking their own course of this. So recently, still in the in the EU submission, there was a statement calling that the French company, that is Total Energies, back home in France. This company is under charge still of lack of vigilance. They have a law due to vigilance. So they are taking in under courts of law about that this company could have not made a correct and submissible vigilance before its inception in this project. And we can see it. We can see how people have been evicted from their land. And is that? And of course, the land is vested in the citizens. However, the government itself has the powers to control its natural resources. But how are these powers being implemented? We are not at an issue of neglecting their resources, because we know the revenue from the resources, it goes back to us through schools, health centers, and all the other public services. But now, the mode of execution, the mode of implementation, are we surviving in that? We are looking at creating peace by the project, creating it in every society, creating it in every entity of life, in the public service of health, in education, at our dinner table still. Because if I have no peace at home, meaning that I won't talk well of the project, which peace do I need? So the question on table is how best these human rights can be curbed or can be taken out of instance. Looking at that perception, I take a charge to inform the government bodies, like the Petroleum Commission that handles that. It should take concerns first. It should look at the EU submission, not as something to speculate in bad faith in the engagements of oil, but it should look at it as a right for it. Best, Uganda is a Commonwealth country. It is submissible to the EU, to the Commonwealth. So, and these human rights are natural. Some of them. You cannot degrade someone. You cannot evict someone without any fair hearing. You cannot inadequately compensate someone. So it is by addressing the very concerns of the people that all this will be put to a stop. Thank you.
Okay, so let me move to Juanita. So as we even talk about addressing the issues that were raised by the EU, the EU decision was received by people differently. There were different reactions all over the country, including the president of Uganda, who came out and said, you know what, if Total backs out, we will get another company to invest. Now, my question to you is, do you think the EU had a right to intervene and call a halt on the operation of Total in Uganda?
According to my opinion, for the sake of human rights, EU had a right to intervene for the sake of human rights.
Okay, then that makes me ask you another question.
Okay.
We have principles in international law that we all here did, issues of state sovereignty. And then as well as Uganda is celebrating 60 years of independence. And then we have seen issues in Ukraine, in Libya. So don't you think as a country we have a reason to worry if we allow EU to intervene?
Basing on my opinion, EU intervening the oil project, Uganda can, to some extent, Uganda can worry of its economy, and Uganda can worry some citizens because of their personal interests.
Okay, I see Tadius has something to add, but let me first even come back to Sam. So Sam, here we have on one hand state sovereignty at stake. We have issues of 60 years of independence. We have seen life scenarios in Libya. We have seen life scenarios in Ukraine. On the other hand, we have human rights, which is universal, and a company that comes from the EU jurisdiction investing. Do you think the EU had a right to intervene?
The baboons we see in the national parks sweat as well. But it's always unfortunate that the hair upon their backs still deceive the world. Yeah, 60 years of independence and almost 70% of our budget is being financed by the EU. We are still relying on foreign aid. It's practically impossible for Uganda to say that EU should back off because we know the consequences. I think that the president of the country would have the audacity, would have stand his ground, he would have that local standard to say that EU should back off, we can do without them, if he was self-sustainable. We are a third-class economy, we are a landlocked country, we rely on foreign aid. We are even, last time they were even urging about why these foreigners were financing individual companies, individual organizations, instead of directing the Ebola money to government directly. We are not self-sustainable. We are not self-reliant. So it would hold water if we were self-reliant, and even the part of the money that is coming in for the pipeline project is going to be borrowed. So I think EU still holds the ground to condemn us, because partly they finance us, they finance our economy, we rely on them. And basically meaning that even when we claim to be a sovereign state, to have recently celebrated 60 years of independence, we are not yet independent. We are still submissive to our colonialists. And number two,
okay,
for purposes...
So let me first ask you a question right there before you move to number two. So Sam, if we know that Uganda was colonized by the British,
Yes.
so should we continuously submit to the EU? Should we continuously have to go for aid? Should we continuously have to do what the EU wants?
Of course, we are governed by the international law, public and private international law. We all know that Uganda subscribes to the Commonwealth, subscribes to the United Nations. Of course, we see that whether or not Uganda does what, or proclaims or stands its ground that it is an independent country, we still have a way to go. We still need these countries. We still need coexistence. That's why you find that our children here will go out for scholarships to study. When disasters come in, we see the World Health Organization intervening. We see aid coming in. So there's no way we are going to do away with the international community. Yes, we are independent in as far as the boundaries, the geographical boundaries are concerned, and the political scope. But when it comes to economic development, when it comes to health, when it comes to the education and now the energy sector, we still need that kind of coexistence. There's no way, because we are considered amongst the poorest countries in the world. There's no way we are going to do away with foreigners. That we have to admit that. There's no way we are going to do away with investors. For example, Total Energies is coming in because it has gotten the technical kind of skill, it has gotten the technical service that we do not have. Otherwise, if we are economically empowered, if we were empowered in terms of skills and what, would not be telling Total Energies to come in. We all know that even Total Energies is somewhere going to invest their own resources and then share the proceeds later on. So there's no way we can do away with the international community whatsoever.
Okay, let me bring Tadius into the discussion. I see he has been wanting to say something forever.
Yeah. I may neglect the concept that the EU should have been halted on its restrictions about the Total energy company that is exploiting the oil in Uganda. Because myself as a patriot, as a Ugandan, I love my country, and personally, I could subscribe to the president's submission about the EU, because looking at what happened in Libya, because basically to myself, I'm contented that issues in Libya could have been based on oil. So he's trying to restrict these people not to engage much in our business, because we may be misled. These people have intentions. As the European Union, it has intention on its side. It has intentions within the project. It may be halting up the France Total company, not by the very understanding of it that it is restricting it, but with hidden intentions. So let us look at it in a perception that we need to take a framework that is vast enough to understand it. That is the side. But here, still the EU, as a law student, it has the validity of its restrictions, because we are under Universal Declarations of Human Rights. Uganda subscribes to that. So the government here would understand critically and technically what EU is meaning. You get? It is only concepting at the human rights. Because looking at the whole project, it is a vast project, a mega one, that may even lead us, my fellow comrade stated as like, it is a project that may lead us in the middle class system of economy. Well, basing on that, now, why is the country neglecting the people just because of its selfish interests?
Okay, let me just ask you right there, Tadius.
Yes.
So, is it okay for a body that we do not subscribe to intervene and address human rights issues in our country?
It can address and advise us, because we are prone to advice. We are human beings. The government is of the people. And of course, if we err here on human rights, anybody can come out. And that's why you have NGOs. Because if not that, we would not be having NGOs. And they are the very organization that they have helped in addressing these facts. Had they not been in place, I think the country would be in a definition I cannot make now. Again, so in looking at this, for me, my mindset is looking at the EU with a perception to control and restrict the total energy, of lack of its vigilance, in the understanding with the government of Uganda, looking at the normal person, the local person suffering, in the event that we are having the other big image of extracting oil. So because it is not a concern of extracting oil, the government gets money, but when the local people are suffering. So look at that. Thank you.
Okay, let me bring Naume into the discussion, because I think she's the only one who has not yet intervened at this point.
Yeah.
So what is your perception on the EU intervention?
Of course, Uganda subscribing to the EU or UN, it doesn't exempt it from some rights. That is a right, sovereignty. Yeah, Uganda as a sovereign country has a right to determine on how it should do its activities. For instance, the oil prospects. I don't think if Uganda continues or goes ahead and with a contract that it has with Total Energies, it is as Ugandans or Uganda's economy, it is down to improve. It won't help those very people. I think that we should be, as every time or each moment we are asking for funds from them. Me, that's my perspective. Then another thing is that, like Jude had brought it, that they may deter Total Energies and let it be after like 5 years, they will bring in their own companies that will support or that will be binding to their laws and that will help them benefit them more other than Total Energies. That's what I think.
Okay. Let me move to Joanita to conclude on that issue of the EU intervention. So, how do we strike a balance as a country between human rights and environmental issues on one hand, and then the issue of a project that is expected to resolve our indebtedness, to give over 15,000 people jobs? How do we strike a balance between the two?
The two are important. First and foremost, I would advise the government to highly put in efforts to implement the laws, especially when it comes to human rights and then conserving the environment. I would advise, when these people are coming to go on with the oil project on the very land of the Ugandans, first and foremost, they should consider value of their land, compensate accordingly for the people to get contented and highly support the project. Because if not, there would come up some challenges that would delay or mislead the project. Ugandans count a lot. And then when we are to talk about the environment, I think when to extract oil, there are some measures that would come up to protect the environment. Let's take an example. When these people are to extract oil and maybe are to power off the residues in the water bodies, I think these things would be treated first, according to my opinion. So I think the government, as it is planning to go on with the project, they're also having measures. Some might have been disclosed, some might not have been disclosed at the moment. But I think the government is having measures to protect the environment. And for the case of human rights, we have seen people coming up to violate, so to demonstrate. So that clearly shows the government is kinda violating human rights. So on that point, I advise the government to come up, enlighten the people about their human rights, and implement the law. That's all I can say to conclude that.
Okay, thank you so much. So let me get back to Sam. So Sam, as we know, the oil prospects is meant to benefit the generation to come. So how best can that be ensured?
Number one, access to information. We ensure that our people have access to what is going on, so that even us who are the now and the next generation are fully aware of what is going on, because we are the government in waiting. We are the leaders of the future, and the future is today. Let's be well versed with what's going on. And number two, also have to empower our people, empower our youth, empower them for the project that is coming ahead of us. Remember, the discovery was made in 2006, but today if you looked for, we do not have enough petroleum engineers. It's just of recent that now universities are now trying to teach petroleum and oil and gas courses, but how best do we come up with, do we incorporate now sciences? How best do we boost the science sector, the sciences, as well as how the president has been putting it? And the other thing is also skilling now the youth. We know that not all youth have gone to school. How best do we incorporate the unskilled, the semi-skilled, and the skilled labor for the benefit of everyone now? We are going to need porters, we'll need welders, we'll need service providers to serve either food, to serve some materials for construction and what. How best do we incorporate? How best do we prepare the country for the oil production? So we have to empower them with skills, empower them, have access the information about the oil prospects, and also look at how best we can fully enjoy now our oil without any interferences. without unlawful arrests, and how best these people can be compensated without these complaints that are coming up. Because these people can also rise up and tomorrow they sabotage or they interfere with the production of the oil if they are not handled in one way or the other. So let's have all these issues settled. Let's have the human rights issues settled so that we can now prepare for potential investors coming in, so that we can also prepare for our economic transformation as a country. And amongst other things, we empower our people, we give them skill, so that this does not benefit the educated, so that the unlearned also have a hand, have a contribution that they can put in and also earn from it. Also empower the regions as well. The Bunyoro sub-region, how are they going to benefit as the Bunyoro sub-region? How are the local governments going to benefit? How about the kingdoms that are in charge of these places? The realities also should come in place, and also have transparency in place. We have, like as I earlier on said, that there are a lot of scholarships, opportunities that are there, but people do not know. Our people in Kasese are ignorant of these things. We have the Petroleum Institute. I've been seeing it on TV, they're training people, but some people do not know. Let's have these issues in the public domain. People should have access to information so that we can also build capacity as a country. And more so, we've heard about nepotism. The company is registered, and when you look at the names of, I was looking at the board of UNOC and what, let's try to strike a balance in the regions. Let's have a regional balance. If we see in Wahereza, we should see Okelo, we should see Baluku, we should see Udong in the system, so that we can have a diversified economy. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We have come to the end of our discussion. I'm going to give the panelists a chance to give us your concluding remarks in less than a minute each. I'll start with Joanita.
Thank you, the moderator. As we conclude, I would advise the government, as the oil project is here and there, we're all expecting much, to consider the human rights, because minus this consideration, I don't think the process is going to go on as we all expect. First of all, you're going to think about security. Ugandans can decide to do anything. And then, again, you're going to think about the economic status of these Ugandans. If it is declining, so you can expect anything to happen to talk about the economic status of Uganda, because this status is promoted because of the Ugandans who work here and there. And then, as the oil project is planning to go on, we should consider the environment. Besides the project, the oil project, we have seen different sectors in the environment. Economic sectors have been contributing a lot to our environment, to our economic status, because we are now considering much the economic status. So I ask the organizations that were put in place to protect the environment to also come up and do their part, as we are planning and expecting a lot from our project. I rest my case.
Thank you. I will move to Tadius.
Yeah, in the event of these prospects, allow me thank the government so far for all what is being put in place, because we see some success in a different perception, which a local man may not understand. But in the event that these successes that we prospect may mislead the whole country into a mess, that the people are not benefiting, that maybe it's only the officials, the big fish around, that are benefiting this. One, looking at the human rights basically, because I myself, I try to place myself, however much I don't have the capacity, but as an advocate of human rights, So I see big enough to it as government to look much on that, because putting in place the Land Act that vests the land in the powers of the citizens, and putting in place the Compassion Act, putting in place the Petroleum Act, it shows me that I think these provisions are not implemented in good faith as supposed to be. Because if they can create a Petroleum Act that regulates itself from the people and the government, so why it not be implemented? So the government should look at its very laws, implement them so that these people can benefit from the oil project. However, if it does not do that, I think we are leading into a big mess, which we may never extract ourselves as a country in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me move to Naume.
Yeah, as we started that, we have a lot of expectations from the oil prospects and oil projects. So I would urge the government to ensure transparency so that people don't doubt a lot what is being done behind our backs. Then carry out active sensitizations, especially to those very regions. For instance, the compensation activities that are taking place, like people don't even know the use of that huge amount of money. I may call them guys have resorted to drinking day and night that very money. They've not going to look to do all other valuable activities like buying new land or continuing educating their children. That is the habit that is taking place there. Then I would also urge active participation of Ugandans. Let's not sit down and look at the oil project as a foreign thing because it is our land. Then back to the government, I would call upon for respect and implementation of the laws that they are enacting currently. Then as we are expecting employment opportunities, then an increase in the revenue, we really have a lot of hopes in the oil project.
Okay, thank you so much, Samuel.
Thank you so much, Gender. I would urge your government to uphold meritocracy. The people going to get jobs, the companies that are going to be contracted, we should look at merit. We should do away with nepotism without looking at where I come from, who my parents are, but we should also look at the potential I can offer. My message goes to the youth that we are Uganda's youngest population, and we are the change we badly need. We are the future of this country. There are a lot of opportunities. The world is growing. There's a lot of emerging technologies. Please, if you have chance to go back to school, go to school. The people studying masters in oil and gas. Please, if you have chance, go and study these courses so that you're not caught unawares. You're not caught that opportunities are not there. Go and study. Those who have not studied, see how best you involve yourselves in vocational skills so that you can also add value to the transformation of this nation. We are the change that we badly need, and we are the future of this country. And if we only come together, we can surely change our destiny. The oil discoveries were discovered in the year 2006, and we see these are 15 years down the road, and nothing has been done as of yet. Okay, the production has not yet been done. So what does it mean? We who are young, we who are in our early 20s, early 30s, it means we are going to implement this. So these people are laying strategies. They are trying to implement the foundation. They're trying to build the foundation. But we are the people who are going to add a brick. So let's see how best we grab these opportunities. We go study, get the necessary skills, and see how best we transform this country. Because we are the leaders. We are the future, and the future starts now. May God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to say thank you to our panelists for gracing our invitation for this topic. Thank you for coming.
Welcome.
I would like to say thank you so much to the organizers of the Inter-University Debate, that is Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. Thank you so much to our viewers for watching. Feel free to subscribe to this channel, comment, go on Twitter, put your comments. Make sure you tag Civic Space TV and Center for Constitutional Governance. Make sure that your views are heard by the policymakers. I would like to say thank you and bye. See you again next time, same day.